it's Mopar Keith here today, and we're going to talk about some AMD panels and how they fit and how these things measure up. And make sure you stay to the end. We're going to show you a very special 1969 Charger. So we're going to talk about these AMD products and how they fit. A common thread with aftermarket panels is fitment, and there's several manufacturers out there that do these, such as Goodmark and Golden Star and AMD, and maybe there was some Sherman products, but I don't know if there's Dynacorn. Dynacorn is another one that we've seen out there that makes front fenders for Challengers. But here at Noel Automotive, we are real familiar with AMD products, and we've got 3 Chargers in here, 3 second-gen Chargers that we're going to discuss the measurements and how they fit together and some of the modifications that we had to do. And we're just going to go through these cars. And like I said, we've got a 68 and we've got 2 69s, and we're going to talk about this 68 real quick here. And then we're going to go into the other building, and make sure you stay to the end to see what we got. So I've got Chris here, and we've got this, I just bought this tape measure actually. It's a flexible tape measure, and we're going to measure some of these panels. And if you're doing a Charger, this will maybe help you. And some of the tips that we're going to give you would help on anything. It doesn't matter if you're doing a Mustang or a Roadrunner or what they are. So, all right, we're going to measure the length of this quarter panel here. So Chris is down there. So this is without the quarter extension on, just the raw quarter panel.
It's 7 foot 2 3/4 inches.
Okay. So how long?
7 foot.
Yeah.
2.
Okay.
3/4.
Okay.
2 3/4.
All right. So there's your quarter panel length. And is what we found sometimes is that this might have to be cut and spliced to fit the door jamb. And we haven't had the issue yet, but sometimes this might have to be cut and spliced if you're dealing with an inferior quarter panel, which they're all not great. But if you had like a Goodmark panel, like an early production skin, now we've used some garbage before, like 20 years ago. Goodmark had a stamping, and I swear to God, you would just cut the whole entire end off of it and just redo the whole end or just reuse the factory end. But the AMD panels are pretty close. AMD panels, we've had to do some gapping. For instance, like this gap is pretty consistent, but we found ourselves either adding or subtracting from this. I've seen guys like Chris Birdsong did one not long ago where he actually had to pie cut the quarter panel to get this gap because for some reason it just went together really tight. And so we've had to add and subtract from trunk lids before. And Chris, let's talk about what we've had to do on these quarter panels on this particular car. So what do we got up in the corner that we've had to do?
So we've had to, like right here, you can kind of see there's still some weld, but there's a gap here between where the Dutchman panel and the quarters come together. And we've had to weld in and actually fill it with weld because it would just be a giant hole and would leak into the trunk and Dutchman and all that stuff. So we've actually had to fill it with weld. And then we've also had to make them, they don't fit perfectly. It's not a nice radius, so we've actually had to just kind of trim it and make it so that the chrome fits, and we actually make the radiuses fit the chrome and not the other way around.
And so the aftermarket stainless that you can buy is fairly accurate, but we've also got some beater kind of original pieces, so you can test fit the original chrome, and also we've got the original glass, so we've test fit the original glass several times to make this stuff fit. So that corner right in there, it's always crucial, and you don't want to find out that it fits like ass when you're putting it together after it's painted. Also, this is a vinyl top car, so with new quarter panels, you have to test fit the chrome. And we've test fit the spears in here, and they fit really nice. Now here's something that was brought up to my attention from another customer who did a Charger. And we've had really good luck with these AMD quarter panels. and how this gas fill bezel, this fits really nice. You can see it, it just kind of comes right down to the edge there. But I had another customer who was, we're gonna do another charger for him, but he said a quarter panel that he had, this depression right here wasn't stamped deep enough. And so when you sit this bezel in there, it actually stuck out. So they had to do some modifying to get it to fit in there. But once again, anything that touches the paint, you have to test fit. So that fits really nice. We've test fit the bumpers, the side marker lights. What else in here, Chris? So what would we have to do here with these holes? We had a whole nother on charger. They have a whole nother piece of trim that goes in here.
We test fit all the trim around it and everything. With the 68s, they have different bezels around the
Just
tail lights
chrome
and stuff.
Yep. And we've had the quarter extensions on and off and test fit those several times.
Yep.
We're going to take another measurement between the quarter panels here, go clear to the end. All right. So from the trunk opening,
It's 54 inches or 4 foot 6 inches.
4 foot 6 inches
Yep.
or 54 inches. Okay. Let's go up to the top here. How about right where that
Right
bend
where the
takes place?
Peak
there?
is
Yeah.
it'd be 4 foot 2, so 50 inches.
50 inches to there. Okay.
Yep.
Now in this particular car, we were able to reuse the original trunk gutter. So you can see the original stampings. It's for the sequence of the VIN number on there. So we were able to use the original trunk gutter, but it's got a new Dutchman and new quarter panels.
A new tail panel.
Man, this car was like a catalog car, so lots of AMD stuff. All right, so I know Joe is doing a 68 Charger right now. He coined the name of Nightmare Charger because it came from another shop that whatever they had to hand it off to, and Joe took over. And so this is what everyone hopes that their job turns out to be. And Chris will get in here and we'll take some measurements. So right now we're gonna measure, so if you have the outer wheelhouses out and you have the Dutchman out, you most likely have the trunk hinge support is been displaced in some way. So Chris has got the measurements from, I'm gonna call that the trunk hinge pedestal that's welded to the inner wheelhouse. All right, so there's where that guy sits. And he's got it over here. And let's see what that is. So 47, so get a close up of that. So to that pedestal, it's 47 3/4 is the width. Yep. All right, then one other detail is the inner wheelhouse placement. Now the trunk floor is pretty much gonna tell you where that's going. So by the lip on that. So he's got it measured there. And you come over here and it's pretty much about 46 inches. So 46 inches is the width on that inner wheelhouse placement. All right, so the spare tire bracket is different on some B bodies. Like you might read in parts catalogs, you've got Super B Roadrunner and Accept Charger. And convertibles are different also in all body styles. So the spare tire holder is off to the left on a Charger. And so we went from the wheelhouse to the spare tire holder is right at 16 inches going from left to the center. And if you're measuring from the right wheelhouse, the right inner wheelhouse to there, what do you got there,
27
Chris?
1/4.
27 1/4 that way. So the spare tire bracket is a little off center on Charger. On Super B and Roadrunner 68 970, they're pretty much dead center. Okay,
6 1/4.
Okay, so here's another measurement. Now, hopefully, if you're doing these cars, you have some remnants of the original trunk hinge pedestal. I know those can rust out just as bad too. But Chris has got the tape measure going from the base of the trunk floor up to right about the center there, and where we're at like 6.5.
Yep.
About 6.5 inches. So that's also one of those parts where you can mock it up and just run some self-tapper screws in there and then move it later and just weld the hole shut. So that about does it for the trunk. We're gonna go in here and we're gonna look at the trunk latch, because obviously if you're doing the back here, this is all, you know, disconnected. Now a lot of stuff is spot welded, and if you don't have a spot welder, you're gonna plug weld these. But on the trunk latch support, it's stitch welded, and we've got it spot welded there, but you could also plug weld it. And then these are called the bumper supports, and these are stitch welded. So you can see the stitch welding there. And we basically modeled all of the welds off an original Charger. And there's the undercoating that we sprayed on there. Try to replicate, once again, an original Charger. And then the seam sealer. So we use electric powered and air powered applicators to take care of our seam sealer and our undercoating. So there's some more seam sealer under there. All right, so Chris is inside the car. Now, one problem that we had with another Charger we're going to show you, this is a 68 Charger, and we have a 69 Charger that the Dutchman panel that we got just fit completely terrible. We ended up not using it, and we ordered another one.
Yep.
So this really matters on the window opening, because you've got to have room for your chrome clips, like right here, you know where your chrome clip goes. So you got to have a little space for your window and the chrome clip. So your window can't touch the edge here. You have to leave at least a 1/4 inch gap all the way around. So what's your measurement there, Chris?
So this one is 21 and 5/8.
Okay, so that's the window opening. Yep. So if your window opening is like 21 or 21 1/4, it's just going to be too small. Mm-hmm. All right, so we've talked about panel fitment and everything, and there's some issue I know Joe has with the quarter panels and how this is. So, all right, we're like dead center in the window, and pull it tight, and what do you got there? So,
You got 43 and 3/4.
okay, so just short of 44 inches. All right, now right here, this right here, I'd say this has a slight curve to it. Mm-hmm. Just a slight curve, and then obviously as you come closer to here, there's quite a significant,
pronounced.
yeah, it's definitely a pronounced curve. This is not straight, and we're going to go look at the other Charger up there, but this does have a slight curve inward, but it still needs to be blocked out, because whether it's a vinyl top or not, this surface right here has to at least look appealing, because it's very visible. How is that side over there?
It's the same exact way.
It's the same exact way, so
Yep.
It's got a little bit of a curve to it, curve inward.
Yep.
So a convex curve, but it definitely curves out when you get close to the Dutchman.
Once you get to the
panel there.
Dutchman, yep.
Yep. So, all right, if you have any other questions on this Charger, feel free to leave a comment. This car is going to be here for quite a while yet, because obviously we're going to paint the whole car. Let's measure some more stuff here. So both of these doors are brand new AMD doors, inside and out, not just skins. And we're going to go ahead and measure the door. And this is something that can be changed. So if you have to add or subtract to the door on your car, whether it's a Roadrunner, a Mustang, a Super Bee, or whatever, this is something that if you're doing your metal work and you're doing the gaps, definitely you might have to add or subtract. All right, so in this particular case, here, I'll hold that there. So on the top of this door is almost exactly 51 inches, but that's going to vary on a different Charger or a different Roadrunner door. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the bottom. Oops. Okay.
Same thing, right at 51 inches.
51 inches. So, all right. Now this one we didn't have to on this one. I think on the driver's door we had to add.
We had to add to the front of it, because
Onto
the
the
gap
front of the door.
was
Okay.
the gap was very, very big.
We had a really good gap back here. We basically go with like a paint stick or 3/16. And you talk to a lot of other body shops. If you're just doing a factory car, 3/16 is kind of the standard. But I've seen like custom jobs, and they might want that door gap to be closer. But man, I'll tell you what, if you're putting like base coat, clear coat, and all your primers, you need to have some space in there. Especially on e-bodies. So e-bodies, and especially Challengers for that matter, they have a really distinct style line in the middle. And sometimes the gap on that is like a full 1/4 inch. because the style line is so defined there with the point that when you open the door, like you'll blow the paint right off of it if you don't have a pretty significant gap. So sometimes 3/16 isn't enough, but B bodies, whether it's Roadrunner, Super Bee, or Charger, you could go at 3/16 all day long and it looks pretty good. So the gaps on this are really nice. Chris did a great job when it was in metal work. All right, so we're gonna measure the front fender on this 68 so we can kind of compare it. Go to the top first.
Go to the top.
All right, so we're gonna compare it to a 69 just to see what it is. So right to the style line on the headlight area.
It's right at 64 inches.
About 64 inches.
Center of it.
The center of it. And there's so many different places that you can measure from. This is a giant variable.
This one would be 63 1/4.
Okay. So anyway, that's about as long as a 68 front fender is. And you can see we've got way more than 3/16. This is at least 3/8 of an inch on the hood to cowl gap. But then when you go on the hood to fender gap, we still try to go with a 3/16 gap. Chris had mentioned is this gap right here, you've got a lot of moving parts and you've got this big fender gap right here, which is probably 3/8. Now we have had a couple cars in the shop before where the fender in this was just like a giant gap. You could add weld or filler to the cowl, but we've basically we'll add a metal rod to the fender just to take up that gap. Because if you add to the cowl, you have to go clear down about 3 inches, and it's just a big Bondo mess. So I'd rather just add metal to the fender. But then you also want this to be consistent through the hood and the fender,
And the door.
and then carry on over here to the door too.
And you don't want the door to be so tight because now you got to mess with the window or the quarter window and all that
And you always
stuff.
want a pretty good gap on the door because everyone that's restored a car, you put it all together and the car is totally painted and the doors fit perfect, but as soon as you put that door seal in there and then you put the windows in with the window seal, and then the door just fits like ass because there's not enough room for that squish in there. So you want to make sure that you got the door out far enough. You don't want to push it all the way in. All right, here's one thing that Chris mentioned. I wanted to try to get all the details in this video if we can. So when you're test fitting your drip rail molding, and on Chargers, you've always got the top belt molding. It's an option on Super Bee or Roadrunner to have this top belt molding, but this is pretty crucial right here. And when you test fit the glass, especially if it's an absolute basket case and the car showed up already disassembled, you're going to want to put the regulators in. You're going to want to put the chrome in here. You're going to want to test fit the glass and make sure it goes up and down, and make sure that the union between the door glass and the quarter glass is consistent and they meet. And we've actually had to modify the way the window regulator is and modify the chrome where it mounts, because on AMD, Golden Star, Goodmark, whatever you're dealing with, it's going to fit terrible. So you almost just have to expect that you're going to have to do some modifications in here. So once again, I'll just die on this hill. You have to test fit every piece that goes on the car. All right, so one thing that maybe separates us from other shops on how we do our restorations, sometimes you might be at a car show or you might just be looking at pictures, and people will have these bolts. They'll just be like the yellow diochromate or black phosphate, or if they're painted, the paint might be all blown off of them and ruined. Well, when Chrysler built these cars, they were totally assembled, and then they sprayed the car. And right in here, we will add, now it's not right now, but we're still in the test fitting stages and bodywork. We will actually add the seam sealer in here after we're 110% sure that everything fits perfect. We add the seam sealer in here and squeeze this tight so the seam sealer will actually squish out of here. And that's real important on any restoration. And then also all the bolts are painted in place so you get a good seamless look and you don't have these goofy looking bolts. Now, I can't speak for Mustangs and Camaros and those cars, but on Chrysler products, They were absolutely painted all together, and it looks really good when you paint it the correct way. And so this engine bay here will actually get painted again. We do what we call a pre-paint, and that's to ensure that behind the hinges and on both sides of the fenders,
Underneath the battery tray.
and underneath the battery tray, and everywhere the factory wouldn't get paint, on our restorations, there absolutely will be paint everywhere. And so we won't probably, well, we probably should actually. We will repaint the underside of the hood, and we will repaint the engine bay fully assembled, paint it with the outside of the car. So when you're at a car show and you open the hood, the hinges match, the bolts are painted, everything matches perfectly. And so we will paint it all at once. To show you an example of how these Chrysler products were put together, we'll kind of just go out here to the graveyard. And that one's super rusty. Look at all that nature in there. All right, so here's a good example right here, maybe. Okay, so you can see the seam sealer right inside there. Let's get a closer look at that. So it's all kind of dry rotted, but that's the seam sealer right in there. And then every single bolt is painted. All right, so here's the other 69 Charger that we have up here. And this is also a very rusty car that needed like doors, roof, quarters, Dutchman, the whole deal. And so Chris, let's go ahead and start. Let's just measure this front fender here. So I want the soft tape measure, yeah. Yep, so, okay. All right, so slightly different style line than the 8, but essentially the same.
Same length, 64.
Right, 64 inches there.
Yep.
And so that's that, and then the next thing we measured the doors. All right, so same thing we did on this car. We had to adjust the door gaps.
Yep.
We had to weld and subtract. That's all done in the metalwork phase. All right, so we got like 51 and an 8.
Yep.
All right, or I'm sorry, 50 and an 8.
No, 51 and an 8.
51
You were right.
and an 8. Okay. And then like clear at the bottom. Okay.
Just about 51. Right on 51.
Right on 51 on
Yep.
there. Okay. All right, so there's that. Let's measure the length of the quarter panel.
And this one has the extensions on it, so it'll be a little bit
just
longer.
measure to the extension,
Okay.
or to the quarter panel.
Yep. Yo,
Oop,
you good up there?
Go ahead and pull that up a little tighter. Okay. All right. What you got there?
So we got 86 and a quarter.
86 and a quarter on
Yep.
that. Okay. All right. So on this car, you can see that we've gone through the test fitting stages of fitting the belt line molding, and this will actually come forward a little bit. I just have it kind of clipped in there right now, but you have to make sure that this drip rail molding flows with this corner piece right here, and make sure all that looks good back in there. So we've run into some examples where this detail area is just garbage. So right here is the vinyl top molding, and I don't care where the factory put it. I kind of just made it to where it looks like it's seamless, like where it just flows right across. So you can see the spear and how it wraps around, and it's got this cutout for the trunk or floor, or a trunk lid right here, and then goes into the window. Now on this one, Chris, do you want to explain the nightmare that we had to go through on this car?
The actual inside of the quarters here were not, they were out too far, so we had to bend them in and stuff and modify them so that they would come in a little bit, because they were actually, when we would test fit them, they were just pushing the chrome way out. And then also the first Dutchman panel that we got, we ordered one Dutchman panel and it would not, like the actual like curvature of the top of it was not right. It was wrong. We would have had to modify it, and it was actually too wide as well. So we actually ended up just sending it back and getting a new one, and this one actually fits way better. Didn't have to do any modification really to it to make it fit the chrome.
Okay.
So.
What would you say about that sail panel? Is there a curve? Is it pretty flat?
It's kind of the same as the 68 that we have. It's got some sort of curvature to it. Definitely up on both of them. Where the window is, it's a lot flatter, and then when you get towards the Dutchman, it curves out more.
Okay.
So,
Now, we will tell you about this side. Go over there and show them this side, Chris.
yes.
This side fits like ass, and we're still going to have to do some work on this.
Yep. This
right.
part up here is way too curved in, so
Yep.
it's got a lot more curvature up here where it's supposed to be more flat.
Yep. So that curves in way too much, and the chrome fits terrible. So we're going to have to, even though this car is in sealer, no, this is in primer. This is still primer. All right, so even though it's in the primer stage, we're going to have to kind of backtrack a little bit and do some metal work to get that chrome to fit nicer. All right, so the other thing, this one has been more of a nightmare than that 68. Now on this one, is this a new trunk lid?
Yes.
This is a new trunk lid on this. However, we did have the original trunk lid to test fit, but it was way too rusty. But it did have good paint on it, so we could match the paint. This trunk lid we had to add on both sides. So the quarter panels fit really nice, we thought. And when we put the trunk lid in here, this gap, like I could almost put my finger in that gap. It was just horrendous. So we actually had to add to the trunk lid all the way up and then kind of remake this curve right here. But I don't know if the gap was just too much or what. But Chris, let's go ahead and measure that gap like we did on the other car.
Yep.
All right, so here's the deck lid. So we did have to, let me change this setting here. Okay, so we did have to add right in through here. We had to add to it and try to, I still got a couple pinholes. We'll take the deck lid off and we'll fill these pinholes. But we had to add a rod all the way down on there. And we had to add a rod on this piece right here. So unless you really know what you're looking for, or you're measuring this by like 30 seconds of an inch, you won't tell that we've added to this just by looking at it. But yeah, we had to definitely add to this to make it fit right. All right, so we'll measure this the exact same way we measured that other gold 68 down there.
This one's 54.5 inches.
54.5 inches.
Yep.
And then let's go up here basically just before the spear. Okay, go
Yep.
back a little bit, Chris. Back, towards the back. All right, where are you at there?
50 1/4.
50 1/4. So as we stated earlier in the video, we did this exact same measurement on the gold 68. And these are also all AMD panels. So spot welding, stitch welding. Now this one we did before the gold car, and I've changed my undercoating technique. So this one is really smooth. I like the 68 a little bit better. It turned out nicer, I think. Seam sealer is still the same way. We use an electric gun to as an applicator.
About the rear valance on
Yeah,
this
we're
one.
going to talk about the rear valance. We didn't on the
Gold
68, but we're going to talk about the rear valance on this car. And you can also see the trunk hinge pedestal. It's in the same position, and we've got the same kind of configuration on the spare tire holder. There's your wheelhouse, the way it's attached to the trunk floor. Always test fitting all the chrome pieces, and I'm going to get down and we're going to show you how the rear valance attaches. All right, so this is a question I've gotten before. My friend Spencer out in Salt Lake City, he's doing a 70 Charger, and his was absolute, just all tore apart. And we had one in here before. It was a 1970 Charger, and the aftermarket parts were just a joke, and they didn't fit at all. So this is how it should look, in my opinion. Now, we've had some original Chargers in here, and we're going to show you. We still have one more 69 Charger to show you, but this is, it took a lot of work to get these to fit the right way. And then your bumper reveal, so you can see how that bumper is. Now, this bumper isn't perfect. It's just here for test fitting purposes, but you can see the bumper reveal on that. Another thing on 69 Chargers, so there's Chargers are different from every single car, I swear. On Chargers, they actually have a whole nother bracket that fits back here for a tailpipe hanger. It's like a heavy steel bracket that fits in there. and the rear valance is different than every other B body that there is. So, so at the end of the day, I mean, if your bumper has the bumperettes, you need to make sure that they fit, and just lots of test fitting. And don't get discouraged because AMD, Goodmark, Golden Star, Dynacorn, they all fit terrible. So you basically just need a cutoff wheel. I'm laying down here. We've also found that these right here, you want to test fit your side marker lights depending on whatever year you got, where it's a 70, 69, and then obviously in 68 you have the round marker hole that goes right here, but you need to test fit these. We actually had to trim some of this out. Oh, and then another thing on 68, charger only, the side marker lights right here on the 68, the side marker lights are different. They actually have an angle inside of them because the side marker light goes right over that style line. So Roadrunner, Super B, Cornet, they have a I would call, oh, and then Dart also. Or is Dart angled like the Charger?
Dart is angled like the Charger.
I think Dart's angled like the Charger because it has that style line. So the Dodge Dart and the Charger have a different side marker light because of this style line right here. So make sure you get the right 68 side marker light. All right, so here's our final 69 Charger. Now this one is all original sheet metal car. It's obviously been repainted. It's a restored car, but it definitely has, I've verified it, it definitely has all the original sheet metal. And here's the rear bumper reveal and the corner of the valance panel. And you can see it fits super tight, and the paint just kind of molds on in there. And then there's how the bottom of that fits. And I told you about that tail pipe bracket. Now this car, it's missing the bracket. We're going to be, when we redo the exhaust and stuff, we're going to get this bracket in here. But that's the rear valance on a 69 Charger original sheet metal car. So if anyone's ever wanted to know how long these cars are, we're about to tell you here. So we've got a different tape measure. We've got a 30-foot tape measure. All right, stand out a little bit away from that thing, I'm telling you. All right. So I'm gonna just go out to the bumper here. So that's probably as far out as everything goes. All right, so that's right about where the rear bumper is. All right, so there's there. All right, clear to the very tippy top or the nose.
18.6.
It's 18 feet long. That's how long these cars are. All right. We had a 68 Charger and a 69 Charger with AMD panels. And once again, this 69 Charger right here has all original sheet metal. So here's our 3/16 gap right there. And then we're going to measure from there. Try not to touch the paint. All right, so that top one is
51. Yeah, 51.
51. So it varies by just, you know, an eighth to a quarter of an inch. All right, let's go to the bottom of the door. All right, so I'm there on the bottom of the door.
Same thing, 51 on the bottom as well.
51 on the bottom of that door. So once again, a repainted car, but original sheet metal car. And let's see the door gap on this one. All right, so probably a little tighter than 3/16 right through here. But when you look down the side of it, that's the 3/16 gap. All right, so original sheet metal car, we're gonna measure the quarter panel length. All right, what you got?
86.5.
86.5.
And
Right, so
a quarter.
front fender, so this is basically a modified 69 fender. What are we at?
64 and a quarter.
64 and a quarter on the total fender length on a 69 Daytona. All right, so let's measure the nose. We're just gonna kind of eyeball this. So if we go, yeah, if you just go from this rubber right here,
18 inches.
18 inches. All right, so that's it for the 68 and 9 Chargers.